Hello, hello. Happy Monday and happy March 1st. I am so happy it's March. That means winter is almost done and it's time for vacation, or it's time to, get cracking on planning your destination wedding. So today's topic is all about destination wedding, of course. And these are questions I think if you're looking at a particular resort, that these are questions you should have in the back of your mind that you need to ask, just to make sure you're aware of what the protocols are at the resort that you're thinking about. So you're going to ask these questions when you've already picked your destination and you already picked out one or two resort and you're deciding, which resort would be right for you. Also, this is you'll ask these questions, I guess, after you know that the date you're looking for and the time you're looking for your wedding is available, because you would be just wasting time just asking the resorts these questions if the dates you're looking for, the time you're looking to get married is not available. So this is when you're ready to make a final decision on the resort before you book. So these are questions I would say you should ask if they pertain to you. They may not pertain to you, but these are important questions I think you should ask if you're looking to pick a resort and you want to make that decision. So number one thing I would ask is, you'll ask the resort, how many events do they have on that day? Do they do two weddings? Are you the only wedding that they're going to do? Is there any other events going on at the resort at that time? Because you want to make sure that they have the proper resources available to attend to you for your wedding. You don't want them to have 5 weddings in a day, so they're stretched thin. So you want to know how many events are going to happen on that day, because that will determine to me how crowded the resort's going to be. Also, if they're having, say, a conference, then, if they're having multiple weddings and conferences, that means your room block might not be available. So you want to know how many weddings they have on the day you're thinking of. Is there any other events going on during that time, to see the availability of the resort, and just to make sure that the wedding department will have enough time to cater to you and your needs. So the other question I would ask is, when do you need to be at the resort? Because depending on what type of wedding you're having, if you're having a symbolic wedding or a legal wedding, the requirements by the country you're in, or also the resort, they might have different requirements when you need to get on property. If you're having a legal wedding, there's required documentation that you have to send in before, and there's time you have to be on resort before you can have a legal wedding. For example, if you're going to Mexico, you have to probably be there at least 3 days before your wedding, because you have to do a blood test when you go to Mexico. So getting married in Mexico requires that you have to do a blood test to have a legal ceremony in Mexico. I think that's the only country that requires a blood test. Most of the islands don't require a blood test. And, 2 to 3 days is the leeway in which you have to be on island at the resort to have your wedding. So that's something I would definitely think about. Also, if you're thinking about the wedding and you're choosing a beach wedding, you want to know where is that beach location for your wedding. You just don't want to make sure that there's people walking by when you're having your ceremony. So you want to make sure, is there any private area that they have to hold your beach ceremony? Because you want to make sure that, as you said, not that it's going to be public, but you don't want too many people walking around when you're having your wedding ceremony, because it's a beach also. So you just want to make sure that, they have for your wedding, the location that you understand what it entails if you're having a wedding in a beach location. Also, for your wedding, you want to ask the resort, what is the weather like during the time that you're picking for your wedding? Because you want to know, is it windy? Is it chilly? Is it hurricane season? If it's summertime, it's pretty hot. So you have to take all of that into consideration with the date that you're picking for your wedding, and also get some guidance from the resort to say, during this time, this is what you can expect the weather to be like. The next question I would ask is, what is your backup plan? Because if you plan a beach wedding and it's raining on that day, what is the backup plan? You want to understand where they're going to move your destination wedding to. I've been in many locations which the wedding is moving to the hotel lobby, which to me is not an ideal location, because it's a lobby and there's always people in the lobby. The next backup plan most resorts have their ballroom. So it's going to be almost like you're having a wedding here. You're going to be in a ballroom, but it's still to me better than in a hotel lobby. So you want to understand what are the different places that are their backup location if something should happen and you have to move your wedding from outside to inside. Question I would always ask is, when does the reception end? Meaning that resorts are going to have cutoff time that the music has to end by, and normally it's 11 o'clock. So then your timeline will change depend if the 11 o'clock is a cutoff. That means your like reception have to start by 8 if it's 3 hours. So your wedding have to start a certain time. Also, you can also ask the resort if you can extend it to 12 o'clock. And if they say, yeah, what is that additional cost? Because sometimes they can't extend that time for you. You just have to request it in advance. And also you need to know what it's going to cost you to extend your reception an extra hour, because most reception are 3 hours. So that's something I would ask. A couple of couples asked me about bringing their own decor to the resort. Like, people ask me, what do I have to bring? For most all-inclusive resort, you don't have to bring anything but you and your attire for that day. They have vendors at the property that will take care of everything for you, from hair and makeup to videography, photography. They're going to have all the food and drinks there, all the decor. So they have vendors that they use to customize the wedding to whichever way you want it. So the thing is, what you bring is things that are personal to you, I would say. Things to enhance your wedding in a way that is not available at the resort. A lot of people like to bring their welcome bags with them so they can give it out to all their guests. So that's something you can bring with you, and you can give it out. Some people like to bring decor that they want, like certain colors they want to bring in. But with any of those, you need to speak to the resort to see, can you bring your own decor in? And if you do bring your own decor in, is there a charge to set it up for you? Because they're going to be in charge of setting up your wedding. For you to add additional items to it, sometimes it comes with a cost. Depending on the resort might say, okay, no problem. Just, bring it to me and I'll incorporate them in your decor, and they don't charge you anything. So that's something you need to kind of be aware of. If you want to bring your own things to the resort, what are their policy on, taking your items and incorporating them into the wedding? And if there's any additional costs to do that, and also what you can bring and what you can't bring. Like, I like flares, or I like, the sparklers. You can't travel with sparklers. So that's something you can't even bring to the resort. And most times they probably don't have it there. So there's just things to think about, what you can and what you cannot bring. There's just stuff you need to discuss with the resort, especially if you have a vision or some kind of idea of what you want your wedding to look like, and you want to bring additional decor to the wedding. Also, even with welcome bags, if you bring welcome bags and you want to give it out or put it in each of your guest room, there might be additional costs to have, if you give them to the resort for them to actually distribute it to your guests. A lot of them do charge a fee for them to do that. What I did for actually my wedding, I did have a welcome bag. My husband and I just, we had got all the room numbers for all our guests. So we just knocked on their door and personally delivered to them and thanked them for coming to our wedding. So that's a personal way of saying thank you, by just giving it to them yourself instead of having it, pay extra for the resort to do that. Also, I gave welcome bags out when we had welcome cocktails, so you could bring them there and you can distribute to your guests. So there's many ways to do things without paying extra, I would say, for things that is not really required. So another question I would ask, if you're picking a resort and suppose it's an adult only resort and not everyone can afford to stay on the resort, can guests who are staying off property attend your wedding? Most time the answer is going to be yes, but there's going to be a limited number of guests. Most time the resort will require 20% or less of the guests coming to the wedding to be 20% or less of guests coming to the wedding that are off resort can attend the wedding, and you have to keep that number. So if you're inviting 100 people, 80% would have to be on property and the other 20% could be off property. So they have a specific amount of people they allow to come on the property to your wedding. Also, there's an additional fee for them to come on the property, because if you're in an all-inclusive resort and for someone to come on to attend your wedding, they have to pay either a wedding guest pass or a guest pass to attend your wedding. The other question is, if I'm in an all-inclusive adult only and I have a couple of kids who are not staying on property that I want to attend my wedding, is that allowed? The question, I would say you have to ask the resort manager, and you have to ask this ahead of time so you'll know. Most resort will work with you if the amount of kids are like 2 or 3. For me, I had my wedding at Sandals, and I did have kids attend my wedding. And although Sandals is adult only, they allowed me to have 3 kids attend my wedding. And what they do is that the kids come on and they have to stay in that designated wedding area. They can't just wander the resort because it's adult only. And they come on like an hour before the ceremony, and they have to leave right after the reception. So that's how long the guests who are not staying on property can stay, and they have to leave right away. So really, if you want a adult only resort and you might have some kids that want to attend your wedding, I would definitely ask that question right up front, because you don't want to be caught off guard later on, because as I said, these resorts are adult only, and they don't really allow kids under 18 on property, but they will make an exception for certain weddings. The other question is, what is the dress code? I would only ask that question because some resort, for certain restaurants, they require you, especially men, to have closed-toe shoes and collared shirts. And sometimes people are packing for a vacation. They don't remember to pack these items. They just think about the beach and the shorts and the t-shirt, and I think that's good enough. But I would ask what the dress code is, on the property, so people are aware of what they need to wear, what they need to bring with them. And also, because most time you're going to have theme event like an all-night white night and stuff like that, you probably want to know, what is allowed. But just understanding what the dress code is will help your guests, pack the right items for their trip so they can actually eat at most of these restaurants. Because I know Sandals have dress code that they won't allow you in the restaurants if you're not wearing the proper attire. The last question I would ask is, are outside vendors allowed? Meaning that if I don't want to use the resort's vendors that they're giving me their videography, their photography, can I bring or get someone else from outside and have them do my wedding? That's also a question you have to ask. Each resort is different. You have to ask the resort to see what their policy is. Most times, if the answer is yes, you're going to have to pay a vendor fee to have that vendor come on property. So that's one thing you have to do. And the second thing is, charge a vendor fee, and it's going to be additional cost for you. The other question I would ask is, if I have my own photographer or videographer as part of my guests, they're already staying on property, can they do my videography and photography? And I don't think they can stop you in that, because the person is already in your party and they're staying on property. But as I said, you just have to ask the resort just to make sure that what the cost is going to be, is it allowed, and what's the cost going to be if you're bringing someone from outside. So those are the top questions I say you should ask your destination wedding resort before you commit to having your wedding there. And if there's any other questions that you have, please leave me a comment. I would love to hear from you. And until next week, I will have another live at 3 on Mondays. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching this on the replay, please put #replay. And until then, I will see you again. Bye.